Okay,
recording.
Can you believe she called the 28th and today is the 3rd of August and it just showed up?
If y'all can
It
see
didn't
my
show up
feet,
my caller received
excuse me.
call.
Oh, I got tons of
Figured he'd be busy, so call you.
Yeah.
Get started. Hello everyone, this is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. Those who are watching at home. Today is August 4th, 2013. And this morning we're going to continue our study on the Foreword. And we're on section 2, it's 215. It's for God the Supreme, and that's on page 49. Yep, page number 4. Number 9. Turn this on. Maybe we'll have to turn that on, probably. If we need to get ready to use it. It's on the side.
Can you repeat that, Brad?
Yeah, I'm on page 49. It's the Foreword, and that's section 2, paragraph 15. And it's item number 4, God the Supreme.
Well, mine is a different book.
Yeah, it would be.
Doesn't help. Where are we at?
It's in section 2 on the Foreword.
Section 2 of the Foreword.
Yeah, and it's paragraph 15 under section 2, and the heading, well, it's for God the Supreme.
Section 2 is God, right?
Yeah, section 2 is God, and go down to paragraph
Supreme.
15.
Gotcha.
All right,
Thank you.
sure. And everybody knows Greg, right?
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
He's online.
Hi, folks. Sorry I've been out for a while.
That's okay. Glad
Welcome
to have
back.
you. Okay, so let's start with God the Supreme this morning. Let's say a little prayer before we get started. Who would pray this morning? Jill, why don't you say a little prayer for us to get started? You mind?
Sure.
Okay. I think I chose you last week,
That's
didn't I?
right. So
It's okay.
He's the chosen one.
Yeah, no,
you can pray again. That's all right.
I'm sorry for you. You have to endure my my words.
All right.
All right. So, thank you, Father. Thank you, Mother. Thank you, everyone who makes this meeting possible. Thank you, Roger, for organizing it. It's always a great time. May this time be as good or better than usual, so that we can learn something to be better citizens of the universe, better child of God, and do the will of God. May this inspire us. I just would like to say also a little thanks to our angels that we, at least I tend to forget a lot, and when I do think about them, I'm concerned about their boredom. And just to say thank you to those guys who are making a big contribution in our lives, so that we can be stimulated in the process of learning how to do the will of the Father. So may we have more and more inspiration in the process. Thank you everyone for your participation.
Amen. Okay, so last time we were talking about the divinity and deity a little bit. We're going to continue on with that in this section with God the Supreme, which is kind of interesting, because on Wednesday night we've been kind of beating this to death. Last week we had a little bit of video trouble. For y'all that don't know, we had to call the meeting because of the storm. We couldn't keep anybody connected, and we don't know if it was a Skype problem or if it was a storm problem, but we did have issues. We're going to try to come up with a solution to that this week. Okay, God the Supreme. Why don't you start this morning, dear? Okay.
God the Supreme, the actualizing or evolving God of time and space. Personal deity associatively realizing the time-space, experiential, and achievement of creature-creator identity. The Supreme Being is personally experiencing the achievement of deity unity as the evolving and experiential God of the evolutionary creatures of time and space.
Okay, and we talked about this a lot on Wednesday, how the Supreme Being is the creation of the Paradise Trinity, okay? And being the creation of the Paradise Trinity, It's the experiential, or what we call the finite God. And the reason it's called the finite God is really it's the God of all of our experience. So it's a way for God to experience His creatures in growth. So as we grow in spirituality, God the Supreme also grows in spirituality in the experiential part. Now, God the Supreme being a creation of the Trinity, of course, started out perfect, didn't it? Okay, but it's gaining this finite and absonite experience over time. And when it finally gains all the possible finite and absonite experience through us, and when the 7 super universes reach light and life, it will come into full fruition. So we know that it's already out there and it's working. It's already a working part of God. It's the finite experiential part of God, right? And we know what experiential is. Everybody knows what that is. That's our own experience, our spiritual experience. So as that comes into being, that eventually becomes part of the 6th one down here, which is God the ultimate. See that there? And eventually that will be part of God the ultimate. And that's when the Supreme Being has come into full fruition and the 7 super universes are settled in light and life. And then at that point, the growth will continue on with God the ultimate. Okay? So this growth never stops, does it? It keeps going on and on and on. Okay, and it's also, notice here it says, is personally experiencing the achievement of deity unity. And that's what we're talking about with this God the ultimate. This deity unity is the combining of all these parts. Yeah, that's right. Of the absolute, right, and the ultimate, I mean, right? Okay, and that's what they're talking about there. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Would you take the next one?
Sure. God the sevenfold, deity personality anywhere actually functioning in time and space. The personal paradise deity and their creative associate functioning in and beyond the borders of the central universe and power personalizing as the supreme being on the first creature level of the unifying deity revelation in time and space. This level, the grand universe, is the sphere of the time-space dissension of paradise personality in reciprocal association with the time-space ascension of evolutionary creatures.
Okay, y'all remember the sevenfold. God the sevenfold, they count backwards, don't they? They start at the lower level and go back up. So let's review God the sevenfold. Somebody wants to do this for me? They can. Or I can do it for you. You need volunteers? All right. God the sevenfold. That'd be Jesus, right? Creator Son, Created Mother Spirit, right? The Ancients of Days, okay? Supreme Being, right?
Before there is the 7 Master Spirits.
Oh, the 7 Master Spirits, that's right, that's right. Who else do we have? Okay.
Then the Supreme Being.
Supreme Being, God the Spirit, God the Son, and God the Father, right? That's God the sevenfold, okay? All right. And notice here it says we're actually functioning in time and space, okay? And they're part of the fruition of the Supreme Being. Now, why would that be? Because the Supreme Being is part of God the sevenfold, right? But the experience of all these creative personalities, which is God the sevenfold, are all creative personalities, aren't they? All the way down from the 7 Master Spirits, architects of the Master Universe, all the way down, are all part of this experience of the Supreme, aren't they? So that's why they're helping to, what does it say here? Power personalizing. You see that? As the Supreme Being. So what they do is actually help build the Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is being part of God the Supreme, right? That's the same, you could call them both the same thing. And they're all the what? The experiential part of God. So the creators are getting experience through creation, okay? And the creatures are getting experience how? Through deity experience and through exploring the concepts of deity and discovering deity. Right? So both of them are part of the Supreme. All right, now think about this. Why is this so important? Because as we go past these 7 super universes and going out into the outer space levels, it's the supreme being and the creative personalities that also go out into these super universes, right? So they gain all this experience on the finite level here, and that way when they go out into the super universes, they'll have the finite, the absonite experience, and so the new experience they have in the new universes outside the 7 super universes is a whole new type of being. It's a combination of the absonite and the finite, right? And the ultimate, right? The absolute. Okay? So this new type of being that's going to be out in these 7 super universes, out in the 4 outer space levels, are a brand new type of being, which is kind of interesting. So we're helping build these concepts for these new types.
I got a question.
Sure.
In our ascension, we start out as finite, and so ours is just growth. We do get to, I guess. So explain that to me.
We go through the absonite. We do not.
We're not absonite.
We do not become absonite. That's you don't want to think that you're going to go from finite to absonite to absolute, because absonite beings transcend time and space, don't they? We're finite. We're part of time and space. So our journey through Havona is to learn to associate with absonite beings, and learn about absonite being, and experience the absonite experience with the existing absonite beings. We don't become absonite, do we? We're on our way to become what? Finalitors, which is what? A finite, final association with God. Okay? So our trip through Havona is an association. It's not a becoming. Right? We become more and more perfect towards perfection, with our thought adjuster. But we just go through that process. Now, what happens when we hit paradise? It's the same thing. Then we associate with what? Perfection. We have absolute beings that we learn about and we associate with. And many of us will do what? Trinitize with these absolute beings, right? All right, when we trinitize, then we become a totally different type of being, don't we? We become part of the trinitization process. But we're still a finite being. At that point, you have a finite and absolute being coming together to create a trinitized concept and create a whole new being, right, out of that. Okay, so that's our pathway. Now, when we become finalitors, what happens? We're sent back out into the 7 super universes for service. We're finite beings, so we're the perfect beings to send back out to the finite universes. We understand finite. We understand finality. We don't totally understand infinity, do we? But that's what we learn by going through these processes. We want to go from a finite concept to an infinite concept.
So finalitors, don't they transcend at least a little bit time and space?
Yeah, they do.
So
when you become a finaliter, you do. You transcend time and space to a certain point. Yeah.
So it's a form of absonite.
It's a form of absolute level. That's right. It is. It is. But it's that transformation when you meet God. You become a new being all over again. And they don't talk about it other than the fact that we're in the core of finality at that point. But in essence, the closer we get to God, the more spiritual we are and the less physical we are, aren't we? So our physical forms, which will be Morancha, higher Morancha beings, 570 levels of Morancha beings. Okay?
570 levels.
570 levels of Morancha beings. Yeah, so we're constantly growing. We're getting more and more closer to spirituality. Then when we become first stage spirits, we become more and more spiritual. And eventually we go from being totally spiritual to finalitors. In other words, why do they call it finalitors? Because it's the final form that we assume, right? And it's the highest form for a finite being. Finalitors. That's what they call it, finalitors, right? Okay, so when we hit finalitors and we come back to serve in the 7 super universes, is it possible for the physical people to see us? No, because we're too high spiritually. But what's the caveat to that? The mechanical physical controllers can make any being visible to any other being, right? So when we come back to serve, if it's in a capacity that we need to have a body, then we will either be given a semi-physical body for, to work with, or they will make us visible to the people we need to be visible to.
Okay, my next question is, inward ascension, coming back out, are we descending? Is that
No, not really. We are always ascending sons of God.
Okay.
The only descending sons of God are the deity sons of God. That would be whom? That would be the creator sons. That would be like the Lenondeck sons, Verondadek sons. They are considered descending sons of God because they're material sons. They're descending sons of God because they're descending down to the finite to help us, right? Now, how about the Adams and Eves? Okay,
Yeah.
we have an exception there, don't we? When they fulfill their mission on this planet, on any planet, what happens to them? They become ascending sons again,
ascending?
don't they? Because they go through the same process as we do, ascending back to God the Father. Okay, so they start as descending sons, they become ascending sons. The difference is with us. The finaliter, we will always be a finaliter, but we descend down to help our brothers and sisters, but we're no longer descending sons, are we? Because we've reached that final point in our existence. We will always be finaliters, unless for some reason God assigns us to another thing to do. Now, what other kind of jobs can we do? We can become mighty messengers, right?
Mighty messengers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are the least recognizable one of the least recognizable forms of beings, because you remember in your ancient book,
It's like being in the CIA or something.
yeah, they travel so quickly. Yeah,
Yeah,
their physical form has to be almost
when I first read about the mighty messengers, I said, that's what I want.
Me too, I said the same thing.
Yeah, I want to be a mighty messenger.
Now, be careful what you ask
I
for.
know, I know.
Okay, because remember, the mighty messengers, when they become mighty messengers, they cannot become closely associated with other mighty messengers. It's a very lonely job.
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
you associate with other beings?
They associate with other beings, but they can no longer be close to mighty messengers. They send out what? The signal.
Keep them separate.
Yeah,
Right.
that they're
I said when I read it,
Yeah.
but I was reading the other day about, and it just happens that, and it just tells about how you put things into content. And so I was reading, and it said about the billion spears of Havana.
Uh-huh.
And so, I said, billion spears. I said, wow, that's the first thing that hit my mind was, wow, billion spears. And I said, 1,000,000. I said, let me see, can I digest this million, break this down, and then, work with it from there. So, I said, 100,000. I said, wow, that's a whole lot.
It's a whole lot. It's going to take you a long time to get through that. If you spent 1 year on each sphere,
Exactly.
right, it'd be 1 billion years, right? Now, and when you think of it that way, when it talks about Jesus started his bestowals 1 billion years ago, that would be like him starting, or us starting on the first planet on Havana.
Exactly.
And it took him that long to finish his
This
mission.
stuff, yeah. And so, that
The
was
universe doesn't get in any hurry, does
it
it?
doesn't. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah, that is amazing. Let's keep moving here. Okay. Don, you want to take the next one?
God the ultimate. The eventuating God of supertime and transcended space. The second experiential level of unifying deity manifestation. God the ultimate implies the attained realization of the synthesized, absonite, superpersonal, time-space transcended and eventuated experiential values, coordinated on the final creative levels of deity reality.
Okay, so God the ultimate, that is the experiential deity of the parts of all the experiential deities coming together, isn't it? And that's why they call this the synthesized absonite superpersonal. Why is it superpersonal? Because the absonite, it's got the absolute, the absonite, and the finite all rolled up into one, right? And it's still experiential. So God the ultimate is that next step of the experiential experience, right? From God the supreme, right? The ultimate, right? And that when we reach the ultimate, where are we at? We're out in the outer space levels, aren't we? We're no longer talking about the 7 super universes, right? So that's God the ultimate.
Are there any rebellion in the Absonite world?
No. No. Why would that be? Why would there be no rebellion in the absolute world? Huh?
So,
Because they were eventuated. They were eventuated from a deity concept to start out with. So they don't have that finite.
From perfection, right?
Yeah, from
Made
perfection.
perfect.
So they don't have that finite, thing. It's really funny as we
Feature.
study feature to
Yeah.
them. As we study the bestowals of Christ at the same time, it's kind of interesting because you think about it, 3 rebellions in our local universe have started with what?
Lemonade,
Well,
yeah.
That's right. And these were, system sovereigns, all of them. So you take someone who is given this huge responsibility and lots of leeway, right? And you add free will. And then what happens? They get the big head, right? So it's a big responsibility when you're given jobs which entail managing large amounts of other beings, isn't it?
Power corrupts.
Power corrupts, absolutely, right?
But Absonite creatures have free will as well, don't they?
They do, but the difference is what? They don't have that finite beginning. They have an absonite beginning, closer to perfection. So they understand better the concept of what the universe is about and what God is trying to do, and probably the love of God. Because you think about Havona, you have ministering spirits that are visible to these beings. It's not like us. We're kind of out here in the middle of nowhere and we can't see our guardian angels, we can't see our ministering spirits, we can't even see our local universe managing spirits, like the planetary princes and things like that. We don't even have an Adam and Eve that we can see. So we don't have these physical influences that are constantly there that we know, oh, somebody's managing this big ball of wax, Since it kind of puts us in an advantage, but it gives us an experiential advantage that they do not have, do they? They have experience, but they have an absonite experience, which is on a higher level. So they're at a disadvantage in one form, but how do they gain the finite experience?
Through us.
Through us.
Yeah.
As we go through Havona, they see how we react. They see our experience. They hear us relate what we have been through, right? And so they learn as we learn. We learn from them, they learn from us. They experience from us, we experience from them, right? It's kind of like the old saying, you don't have to go through something to understand something. You can understand through something through observation. People say, well, these people that go out and rob and kill and that sort of have this experience that they have an advantage. No, they don't. You see how that reacts in their life and what it does to their life. So you gain that experience that they've been through by what? Observation.
Right, it's like Eve didn't have to,
That's right.
Do
You
what
didn't
she
have to
did.
do what she did.
and on and on and on.
That's right. I may have lost Greg there.
Well, I got my next question. Okay, so Lucifer was of what sun order? The
Lenana.
Now the veranda deck is under. I'm still piecing this together. So
No, the veranda
it's
deck-
above Lynn.
Yeah.
And the system
the-
sovereigns are.
Lenana decks. Usually
So all
the
of
veranda
our
decks are
rebellion came in that.
in that area. That's right. Yeah. The veranda decks are usually what?
The constellation.
Yeah.
Constellation. Yeah, that's right.
So they're above the local system.
Right. So the constellations. I'm gonna get it together.
That's all right. It takes time. Let me see if what it's saying. Hold on. They're trying to get the call back. Okay.
Roger, are
Did
there?
it get back?
I just heard a boop.
Yeah, let me see. Oops. I lost it. Continue. It won't even let me read out.
I listen. Some people that I talk to that is reading the book and they say we are where we're supposed to be right now in the book that we're reading. But I really do think that this is given to us to help us prepare to go forward. not to just be satisfied that we know maybe a little bit more than the average Joe, but I look at it as a way of it's helping me to cleanse myself now, so that as I move forward, that I'm more ready to receive.
Greg,
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, you're learning to be a cosmic citizen.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's part that
you got
take
dropped
this
there
word
for
and
some
not
reason.
do anything with it.
Welcome
that
back.
Welcome
you start
back.
a self-evaluation of self
That's right.
and go through that process, and I just think that it said the Bible tells us as I read the Bible, I haven't read the Bible, but it says worry about not tomorrow will take care of itself, and that what we have today to take care of the day, and the day, if you're taking care of the day, it'll take care of tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
You know.
Okay, let's keep going here. Next one. God the Absolute. Greg, if you're still out there, why don't you go ahead and read that one?
Greg?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. God the Absolute. Experientializing God of transcendent superpersonal values and divinity meanings, now existential as the deity absolute. This is the third level of unifying deity expression and expansion. On this super creative level, deity experiences exhaustion of personalizable potential, encounters completion of divinity, and undergoes depletion of capacity for self-revelation through successive and progressive levels of other personalization. Deity matters. This is
Okay, we lost that last little part. Deity is now encountering intention upon experiencing identity with the unqualified absolute. Now, do y'all remember the unqualified absolute? That's that part of God out in that primordial space that organizes the finite, organizes the matter, right?
It's non-personal.
It's non-personal, right? It's that absolute of God that's non-personal, okay? All right, so you think about this. God the Absolute. Let me see if I can go right down here to this 178 here. Well, I might not have to. Okay, the God the Absolute. This is what they're talking about here, right? The universal absolute. Hang on, I got a better slide than that. Let's go all the way to the end here, if it will let me. I have to come back to it. What a great slide of this. It makes perfect sense. If I'd have thought about it, I'd have stuck it in here. Okay. Well, we're going to come to this. I'm going to come back to it later. I'm almost there and I chicken out at the last second.
Would it be true to say, or somewhat true to say, that God the Absolute is the one managing, in a way, the emerging forces and energy coming from the unqualified Absolute?
Yes. Yeah, it would be true to say that. Although the unqualified absolute doesn't mean management, because that's really managed by the I Am, God the Father.
Well, so he got probably got the absolute in a way, right?
Yeah, yeah. But you could say it's part of the experiential part of God the Absolute, because it's the combination of the three parts of God the Absolute, which we're going to study at length here shortly. So I'm going to wait for that slide when we get there. Especially since we're just going to do kind of an overview of this. What do we have here? Okay. All right, so let me see if there's anything else I want to say about this God the Absolute. This is interesting too about the Absolute, God the Absolute too. it says when it reaches God the absolute, it's undergoes depletion of capacity for self-realization to successive and progressive levels of other personalizations. You see that?
Yeah.
So what they're talking about here is it exhausts its own potential for growth. Does that make sense? That's what they're talking about here. That's why they call it God the absolute. There is no God past that, right? That's the ultimate absolute expression of this experiential deity, and all these other things combined together. And that is why, as long as there's growth in the universe, will the absolute ever be complete?
No.
No. That's the interesting part about God the absolute. It's like this. If it ever stopped growing, what would happen? Growth would stop. Yeah.
If what would stop growing?
The absolute.
But
If it stopped growing,
you mean God the absolute?
yeah.
But God the absolute is existential.
That's
So-
right. That's what I'm saying. See, if it is as existential, if it never stopped, never began, never end, right? If it ever stopped growing, the universe expansion would stop, wouldn't it? You think it's kind of a catch-22. If you think about God the absolute, you can't find a stopping place. It can't have a stopping place. As long as there's expansion in the all the universes, right? As long as it keeps expanding and is existential, will God the absolute be completely finished? No.
Because God is ever expanding.
He's ever expanding. That's right. You can think of God, if you think about it, you can think as the I am as an absolute, right? He always has been, always will be, never changes, right? God the Father, God the I am, never changes, does he? Well, how does he change, though? How did he allow his own expansion?
Through our
Through the
experience.
Supreme Being, through these other gods, right? Like God the Absolute, right? He allows expansion through these other deities who's an expression of himself. But we always come back to the I am, don't we? And that's the unchanging God, right? Think about it this way. Think about the experiential part of God. And in order for God to experience finite, he had to create a sub-portion of himself, right? Which is the Supreme Being. Because he couldn't experience anything else. He already knows everything, right? What a concept. So, regardless of all this stuff you learn, what can you always come back to? The I am, the Father. Right? It's the unchanging part of God. Okay. But this God the Absolute is a very interesting concept anyway you look at it. Okay. Let's go on to the first source center here. Okay. You want to take this next one? Okay. And let's do all of these because it's gonna break down all these. We're not gonna talk about this one too much.
Number 3, the first source and center. Total infinite reality is existential in 7 phases and as 7 coordinate absolutes. Number 1, the first source and center. Number 2, the second source and center. Number 3, the third source and center. Number 4, the Isle of Paradise. Number 5, the deity absolute. Number 6, the universal absolute. And number 7, the unqualified absolute.
Okay, so who's the first source and center?
Universal Father.
Universal Father. Who's the second source and center? The Eternal Son. Who's the third source and center?
Infinite Spirit.
The Infinite Spirit. Okay. Those 3 are primary deities, are they not? Okay. The fourth one, the Isle of Paradise, is that deity?
No.
No. It can't be, does it? Does it have personality? No. No. But it's considered an absolute. Why? Because the Isle of Paradise is the pattern for all material beings.
Absolute pattern.
Absolute pattern for everything, right? Okay, let's go on to the next one. The deity absolute. Is that a primary being? It is, and it's in the fact that it's extension of God, but not part of the original three, right? So this would be the second part of the Trinities. Does that make sense?
Would that be the sons?
No, the deity absolute are extensions of the I am.
Is it the same thing as God the
So-
Absolute?
Huh?
Is it the same thing as God the Absolute?
God, yeah.
So it would be the
Deity
one that go.
Absolute is
Yeah.
God the Absolute.
Is God the absolute? I would say yeah, in the same sort of thing, because the deity absolute is the deity part. I don't like to call it God the absolute because our concept of God is so strange. I'd rather just say it's the deity absolute. It's the deity part of all the deities, where the universal absolute is spirit, mind, and what? Material, right? That's the universal absolute, right?
Material being paradise.
Material being the paradise isle. The universal, the glue that keeps it all together, right? You think of the deity absolute, that is the spiritual deity part of God the Father, right? You can think of the deity absolute as a combination of God the Father, God the Son almost.
Oh, deity, absolutely.
Deity, it's the absolutes of all the deities. It is also including the infinite spirit, but not as much as the other two. Because the infinite spirit has more to do with what? Mind and physical, right? So if we get it in our minds that God the Father is the God of personality. Think of it that way. God the Son is the God of what? Spirit. God the Spirit is God of what? Mind. And what else? All physical matter. Okay? So, you think of the universal absolute, it's the combination of everything. It's the glue, right? Now, how about the unqualified absolute? The unqualified absolute is that part of God that deals with what? The outer space levels. The primordial matter. It goes out there and organizes things before anything goes out there, right? And then when God says, okay, I have this space, I've got a little matter out there, that I've put out there, it's ready for what? The architects of the master universe, right? And it's the architects that go out there and fulfill what? God's plan. God has the plan in his mind, but he assigns that to whom? The architects of the master universe. Okay? So, the unqualified absolute is not got what? Personality. It doesn't manage people. It doesn't need a personality. It's that force that goes out there and moves things around. Right? Now, the universal absolute, does that need personality? Yes. Why does it need personality? Because it integrates spirit, mind, and matter. Right? Integrates all three of those. All right?
So the universal absolute has a personality independent of God the Absolute?
Yes. Yes.
So why is it considered a deity?
Because the universal absolute, God the absolute has what? Experience. Right? God the absolute, or deity absolute. Yeah. No, not deity absolute. God the ultimate has experience. Right?
Well,
Is
for
that what
God the
you-
Absolute, it says the experientializing God.
The
So there is a
experience.
form of experience there as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Um,
But it doesn't come into full fruition though until what? The Supreme gets involved, right? You follow me?
Mhm.
So these are the beginning parts this is the first parts of the Trinities, right? The primary Trinities and the secondary Trinities, and we're gonna beat that to death when we get to it here in a little bit. So, but it's part of the second level of Trinities. What's the first level? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. So these absolutes are the second level down, right? So that's why I called the first three the primary level, right? The second three down here on below the Isle of Paradise, they're what? The secondary level, because they're the concepts brought about by what? The primary level. All right.
So what we were talking about just before in the previous section, we were talking about the word God. we're talking about personalities.
Personalities.
Now
right.
we're talking about what they call infinite realities.
Right. Absolute realities. Right? That's why they call them the absolutes.
The absolute infinite existential
Yeah.
realities. So these are realities.
These are realities. These exist before everything else.
So some of them are personality, therefore they are also kind of God, but some others
Yes.
are not. I'm still struggling with that.
Yeah.
Who has
Well,
personality, who doesn't?
Yeah.
So,
The real one that does not have, there's two that does not have personality. What would that be? The Isle of Paradise and the unqualified absolute. All the rest of them have personality.
so I'm still struggling then with the universal absolute. And that's the part that is. And I know we talked, like in the preparation, we talked a lot about that. So
Yeah.
shame on me.
We're going to come back to it again though. Okay, so don't get too lost. We'll hit it again. Let's keep moving because we're gonna go through each one of these. Okay, this is a great slide here. I want to make sure we go through it. I'm trying to keep track on this one too, so that I don't have to keep looking behind me. Okay, so what do we have here? This is the original expression of God, right? This is the first level. What would that make this?
Second level.
Second level. What's in between?
Paradise.
Paradise. Okay, now the interesting part about this is this. The Universal Father, when he conceived of spreading himself out, right? He literally split himself and created what? The Son.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time this happened, right? The Isle of Paradise appeared,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What's the third action of God?
The Spirit.
The Spirit. What happened when the Spirit appeared?
Ramona.
Havona appeared, right? So you can think of this as the primary action of God. This is part of a primary action of God. And what's Havona? Part of the primary action of God, isn't it? First level. Okay, so the secondary action of God is what? These. Now why did he even need these? Huh? For us. Yeah. Yeah. When the seven super universes came into concept, he needed management for those seven super universes, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And part of this management of the concept creates this, the qualified absolute. What is this? The revealed spiritual absolute. What's that relate to? The Son. Okay? How about the revealed physical absolute, right? What does that relate to? It's conjoint actor. Because what? The physical absolute involves paradise and the conjoint actor, right? And then we have the universal absolute. All right, this is also the unqualified. Why is this the unqualified? Because it's a creative part of God the Father, right? Going out and starting the primordial matter type stuff, right? That's why this is the unqualified. See this? You would think the universal would be over here, wouldn't you? But it's not. It's the sixth one because it's the physical part of starting out.
So just like the unqualified absolute is the it is the unqualified for the 4 outer space levels. This is for the seven
super universes. Bingo. Right. This happened for the 7 super universes.
Right.
The universe absolute.
Huh?
The unqualified.
The unqualified. The unqualified had to come out into the 7 super universes and do what?
Organize the matter.
Okay.
Organize the matter. Before what?
Creating that.
Yeah. Before this. Yeah. Before the creator sons were created and sent out to create the universes and all that.
Okay.
What came before the creator sons? Y'all know this. The architects of the master universe. Right? They had to go by what? The plan. Who created the plan? The architects of the master universe. Under what? The original Son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remember the original Son experienced everything a creator Son has, right? So, when Havona was created, conjoint actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think was involved in that? The original Son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The architects of the master universe had to go out and put out the plan, The original Son followed it and created what? Havona.
So the universal Father and the eternal Son, Isle of Paradise, original Son, eternal Son, and conjunct actor, Havana.
Yeah. All together, they created Havana, right? Okay, now think about this. The Creator Sons followed the pattern of what? Paradise. For all the super universes. Okay? They mimicked whom? They mimicked the original Son. Why do you think, you remember the original Son has to go through all 7 bestowals too?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept because he was in control of all of this, and yet he bestowed himself also into Havana, which is mind-boggling if you think about it. But the Creator Sons followed the example of the original Son, all 700,000 of them, in their universes. So what we are studying about the 7 bestowals of Christ, Michael, he is copying what the original Son did, right? He bestowed himself on every type of creation that what? He created. The original Son did the same thing in Havana. All 700,000 of the Creator Sons are following the example of the original Son. Okay, let's go back down the unqualified. So, during the creation of Havana, the unqualified was involved, wasn't it? Yeah. Had to be. And then who went out there next? The architects of the master universe, right? They create the plan. The Creator Sons comes along and what? Takes the plan, takes a period, a area of space, and they pick out where they want their local universe. And they start creating what? With the local universe mother spirit, of course, life. They start creating life. That's right, planets. You know, billions of years it takes to create all this stuff. That's why we're 619, number 619. There's another 300 planets that probably are just being started in our local universe, right? And being out on the edge of the universe, we get the privilege of being able to see that happen. You know, what a wonderful concept. Okay, now, think of this one. Oops, I got off my... there we go. Think of this. How about the universal absolute here? Okay? This is what? The associative resolving absolute. Now what are we talking about? We're talking about resolving spirit, matter, and mind. What's the mind part? The mind part is that concept of God coming into existence. Right? So that's why this, I keep calling this universal absolute. It has to do with deity, it has to do with spirit, it has to do with mind, and which is the conjoint actor, and it has to do with what? Matter, the paradise. So this is why I keep calling this the glue that puts it all together, because it takes this, this, and this, and brings them all together.
So, the qualified absolute in this chart, how does it relate to the deity absolute that we just talked about?
It's the exact same thing.
God the absolute on the person inside.
It is the deity absolute.
It is the deity absolute. This qualified absolute is the deity absolute.
Is equal to the deity absolute.
Yeah, you could say deity absolute here, or you could say qualified absolute, either one. The reason it's called qualified is because it's qualified by deity. Okay? This is unqualified. It does not need deity, does it? The unqualified is part of the I am, the original Father, the concept. That part of God that is not controlled by anything other than God the Father. Right? It's probably controlled in conjunction with the Trinity, but it's the original concept of God the Father that starts it. In other words, you can think of it this way. The universal Father is equivalent to the unqualified absolute, right? Who's the equivalent of the qualified absolute, the deity absolute then? That would be the Son, the spiritual expression of God, right? The universal absolute would be what? The resolving part of the Trinity, right? Because the resolving part, think of what the conjoint actor does. It resolves the spiritual, the mindal, and the physical, those three, right? So that's why it's called universal absolute, right? It's universal over all parts. Okay?
They really needed to put pictures in this book.
So coming back to my to the other question I had, which is God the absolute.
God the absolute.
So
Let me back up here. Let's back up to God the absolute. Can you do that for me, dear? Okay, and let's read the, all right, go just a tad too far. One more
God
down.
is.
Period. See this experiencing, see this here? The God the absolute, can you hit it one more time?
You can do
Oh, it goes off the,
Yeah, that's
okay.
fine.
All right.
now it says
Okay, let me
now
bring it.
existential as the deity absolute.
Okay, let's read through this again. Maybe it'll clarify it. Okay, God the absolute, the experientializing God of transcending superpersonal divine values, divine meanings, now existential as the deity absolute. This third level of unifying the expression on this super creative level, deity experiences exhaustion. Get that? Personalizable type potential. Encounters completion of divinity. Completely, right? Undergoes depletion of capacity for self-realization and successive and progressive levels on other personalization. In other words, it can't go any further. That's the farthest it can go. Deity now encounters, impinges upon, and experiences identity with the unqualified absolute. So,
does that mean it's actualizing?
it's actualizing constantly. It's on the edge of reaching the unqualified absolute. Now, what's the unqualified absolute? It has no personality. It doesn't have to be part of deity because it is deity, right? But it is non-existent before the unqualified absolute takes over that space, right? So if you think about this, God the absolute impinges constantly on non-existence. That's the way you can think about it. It's the experiential part of God that's growing, which includes what? The Supreme Being, God the Supreme, God the Almighty, which we'll talk about later. Supreme concept. But everything is finished. It's on the edge of the unqualified absolute. What is past the unqualified absolute? Non-existence. That's space that God has not even expanded into, right? Into infinity. So, can this ever go completely into the deity or the unqualified absolute? No, not as far as we know. It's never been done. It's that edgeways, right? The edge of all the universes. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me, and it's interesting that they say now existential. So how could they say now existential?
Because by the time you start talking about the God, the absolute, you're including what? The Supreme Being. The Supreme Being is what makes it existential.
Right. But that says existential as the deity absolute. So it seems to me that God the absolute and the deity absolute are the same name.
Well, they're the same name, but they're not the same.
The
One-
deity absolute
One
seems
has
to be
experience, the other doesn't.
Which one does? God the absolute would have experience in your mind?
Yes.
But the deity absolute doesn't?
No. It's not experiential. It's just part of deity. The deity absolute's experiential. I'm going to have to go all the way to the end of this. Gosh, I wish I had this in another format. You'll tell me when it stops. I'm just going to hold it down until it stops. I'm going to show you a picture. It'll make better sense.
Had to go there anyway, huh?
Huh?
Had to go there anyway.
Had to go there anyway. And unfortunately, I put it at the very end. Come on. I'm almost there. Okay, hang on. Let me back up here. See, this is the second level of the Trinities I was talking about earlier.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Second level of trinities of trinities. There's the supreme being, qualified, ultimate. Okay. Hang on.
Almost there.
Ultimate Trinity. Absolute Trinity. That's not what I'm looking for. No, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. Yeah, I was there too. Okay. You see this absolute trinity here? Let me back up to the slide. There it is. Right there. See this absolute trinity here?
Yep.
Okay. It serves two purposes. First of all, it's the combination of the supreme being, the eventuated ultimate being. Okay, this is the transcendental ultimate deity.
But
And
once the supreme is complete, then
once the supreme is
ultimate
complete,
is
right?
eventuated.
And what they call the consummator of universe destiny, which we haven't talked about. Okay, they don't say much, almost nothing about this in the book. They mention it, and that's it. But this is what's called the absolute trinity, and it involves these three. But also, what an interesting part of this is they call this the third level of trinities because it involves the experiential finite deity, which is the supreme, the transcendental absonite deity, which is the eventuated ultimate being, okay, and the qualified absolute, okay, which is the complete revealed spiritual absolute. Okay? Because of this, right here, the experiential finite being, this is considered what? An experiential deity. Before that, before the supreme is finished, what's it called? It's just an absolute deity. Follow me? It's not the absolute trinity until this is involved.
You mean complete?
Complete. Yeah.
This complete, and I guess the ultimate complete as well.
Right.
Yeah, that one has to be complete too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Are they going to be complete at the same time, or is the ultimate going to be complete after the supreme is
That's
complete?
the 4 outer space levels. When they
Yeah,
get
that's
completed.
everything has to be complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the supreme will complete when? The supreme will complete its experiential part, full fruition, with the 7 outer space levels. But does it stop there? No, it doesn't. It continues on growth through what? The outer space levels. See, that once the supreme being was created or eventuated, whatever you by the Trinity, once it started, it never ends. So you can't ever say, well, when the 7 super universes are complete and the supreme comes into full fruition, that's it for the supreme. It's not.
That's
It's-
not it, but that's still a key milestone.
A key milestone because this comes into existence, right? Full fruition too.
Well,
Because you need this for these three to create this absolute deity, Trinity. Now, the other thing you need it for is this. That's why there's a yellow line here and a white line. I drew the yellow line within this so that we understood that this is 2 different Trinities here. Part of it, 2 different types of Trinities, right? This one includes the consummator of universe destiny, which there's only like 1 or 2 sentences in the whole book about this. They don't even tell us what this is. So you can tell by what it says, though, the consummator of universe destiny, that what probably happens is that's when the supreme is in full fruition, that it's consumed the destiny of itself, right?
Kind
But
of gives birth to that.
it gives birth to whatever comes afterwards, right? Which is what? The 4 outer space levels. So we go from a supreme that is fulfilled its destiny, in essence, in the 7 super universes, but really that's its beginning for what's to come, right? It's beginning just like what happens to us. When we go to the mansion worlds, that's our beginning for our future to finality. So if you think about it this way. The Supreme with the 7 super universes reach light and life. the Supreme's at its beginning point, isn't it? All over again. Because it's reached its destiny, and that Supreme and whom? The seven master spirits, or the the creator sons, the created mother spirits, the architects of the master universe, the seven supreme executives. All these beings are allowed to do what? They go out into the outer space levels and they start from square one and start building all over again, don't they? What a concept. You know? It seems like a lot, but it's understandable, isn't it? It's understandable. You can see the plan. And that's the whole point of this book, right? It takes our concept of a deity that is so murky and so out there that we can't even come up with a good concept. If you go up to 100 people and ask them what God is, they're going to have 100 different answers for you, aren't they? What they're trying to do is give us a base to work from. And that's what this is a base. And this forward's just the explanation of the terms. We haven't even gotten into the book yet, right?
It's basically the framework that we're studying.
It's the framework. That's right. I got a job for somebody. Keep hitting that till it gets back to where it says slide 44. Yeah. Hit it a couple times. Yeah, that's it.
The other direction. Oh,
No, yeah,
oh,
you're
you can
going.
single through?
Yeah, just keep flipping till you hit
What am I looking
So
for?
past
What
one,
is it?
slide 44.
so past 178, you cycle
Wait, wait,
through one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hang on, before you do that, I hate to do that, but let me show y'all something. Drive y'all crazy. This last slide in these sets of slides.
Nice.
That
There
big
we go.
picture, yeah.
Yeah, 174. If y'all can remember this, it's the fourth slide from the bottom. The last one's just the thing. This is basically an outline. You see how it's a big triangle?
Yep.
And you have a lot of little triangles in between? If you think about it, this is the entire concept of the I Am. All of these beings have their shape and form within the I Am, within God the Father. Okay? And all the rest of these little things, like these trinities and these absolutes and all this, and I have listed here the triodities, okay? The different triodities and everything is listed here. This is a triangular picture which includes the Trinity, the first level of the Trinities, the second level of the Trinities, and all the other Trinity concepts that they talk about is on this one picture, right here. And if you understand all these concepts, you have a good concept of the I Am. This all lives within the I Am. This is God the Father, the original concept.
I have a question. This whole concept, and with the realtors bringing this information to us, do they do that to other universes? Is that part of the divine plan also, so that...
They probably do. They don't tell us that they do or they don't, but I would think they would. We obviously got way off track for them to need to do this for us, right? Why would they do this in this universe? Because normally we would have an Adam and Eve, wouldn't we?
Right.
The Adam and Eve would teach us all these concepts and things. So since we have no Adam and Eve and we're at a little bit of a disadvantage, they've given us this additional revelation. That's why they call it the fifth epical revelation. And they need to straighten this out.
So the other planets have been going through the rebellion that we've been experiencing would also most likely have the realtors
Most likely.
revealed to them also.
Yeah.
This kind of information.
Yeah. There's
You know,
maybe
they're connected to all the universe circuitry, and so they've got a constant feed of information about
well,
what's
not the
going
ones.
on.
Well, not the ones that were in the 39
Right,
planets.
no, I
yeah.
know
Yeah,
that.
they're-
That's in our universe, the 39 planets, though, right?
But
Yeah.
a normal
Yeah.
world.
But a normal universe, yeah, you wouldn't need to do this because
Right.
you'd have what? The circuits.
Right.
You know, so we would know what's going on all the time, and we don't. We're at a disadvantage. So, you know, if our next neighbor's named Polonia or whatever, you know, they may have a Polonia book instead of a Urantia book that teaches them what happened on their
Out
process.
of the
This is also
7
part of the
super
plan.
universes, is any one of them so enlightened life?
Oh yeah, in the first super universe.
The first universe
Yeah,
is seven,
many of
right?
them. No, not the
No,
whole
no,
universe.
So no universe is fully
It's totally
settled.
No, none of them. The first super universe is the progression farther than the rest of them, and we're probably low man on the total.
Yeah.
More likely. But that's okay. We'll all get there. You know, we're at an advantage because we have the opportunity to learn these things. You know, which makes us better beings for the future. Keep it backing this up.
I think we have a great, I mean, eventually we will come to realize the great advantage that we have.
Actually,
Because of
46.
the rebellion, because of Jesus, because of what happened to him here, I think, you know, we're gonna end up having experience that is very valuable.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it does say too that other beings come to our planet. Sphere because of the things that we have went through, and to gather information and to learn from, you know, what has happened to us.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
What are those people at the World of the Cross doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are they doing? We're of much interest to the super universe, right?
Right.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide, which should be 47. God, the first source and center.
Just one more thing on this, with the daily absolute. I was just fast reading it, and the way we think of God the Supreme as the God of the finite beings, and God the Ultimate as the God of the absolute being. It looks like we can think of God the Absolute as the God of the beings on paradise.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's another way of viewing
That's
it.
another way of viewing it. It is. Very good way of viewing it. Okay, we're right there, dear. Okay. So, lost track of that. Jill, would you take the next paragraph?
So God as the first source and center is primal in relation to total reality, unqualifiedly. The first source and center is infinite as well as eternal, and is therefore limited or conditioned only by volition. That's
Okay, and that's the only type of God that's that way, right? God the Son is not that way. God the Spirit is not that way. Only God the Father, right?
You mean in terms of being conditioned by volition?
No, is the first source.
Oh, okay. That's
The first
God's
source
will.
and center, right? Everything else came after God, right? The first source. And he's only conditioned by volition. Now, all the rest of the deities they talk about, the absolute, God the deity absolute, and all these, are conditioned by what? The volition of God, volition of the Father, volition of the I Am. Not their own volition, but volition of the I Am. Does that make sense? You follow me there? Okay. Let's get on to the next one. Diane, you want to take the next one?
God, the universal Father, is the personality of the first source and center, and as such maintains personal relations of infinite control over all coordinate and subordinate sources and centers. Such control is personal and infinite in potential, even though it may never actually function owing to the perfection of the function of such coordinate and subordinate sources and centers and personalities.
So God controls, but he what? He delegates everything to his beings, right? He's the over control. Okay? So it says here what? Maintains personal relations of infinite control. So he personally maintains control, doesn't he? All right? Such control is personal and infinite in potential, but not what? In actual. In other words, he may not actually make these things happen himself because he delegates these things to happen, right? He's the potential, not the actual. The actual does what? The actual would be like God the Son and God the Spirit, doesn't it? They actually make it happen, don't they? Okay?
The exception though is for personality, right?
Exception for personality. That's
And
right.
the thought adjusters.
And the thought adjuster. That's part of personality, though, if you think about it. He allows a father fragment available for us, and then he gives us the personality for that father fragment, right? That father fragment has to earn the ability to fuse with us, doesn't it? So that part of God himself, he gives himself the own responsibility of what? The reason they call it the thought adjuster, adjusting our thought patterns to a spiritual nature. And that's what the thought adjuster do. And in order for that thought adjuster to get what? Personality, which God gives us, it must qualify itself, right, to us and make it work, right? Now, the question is this. How good a job does God the Father do to relating himself to his children so that we understand himself, so that we can fuse with him? So it's a partnership. It's really a partnership. We can choose not to survive, right?
You know, it's so interesting because now when I'm conflicted in my mind, I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I understand that it's my mind and my adjuster, and there's
Going at-
that's
yeah,
right, and
going
there's
at
a
each other.
conflict going on.
That's right.
And
God's trying to say, this is the way. And you're
That's
going, no, 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 no.
that's right. That's
You
right.
know? God is that small voice that always says, this is the way. This is perfection. This is the way to do it. And we're the ones that are going,
Yeah.
you know, right?
But I understand that so much better now. And, you know, it's comforting to understand it. You know, you just wish you could go on to the next level and just, you know, always make the right decision.
That's right. So you have a pre-personal fragment and a personal fragment fighting with each other, don't you?
Yeah.
And the devil ain't got nothing to do with it.
And the devil got nothing to do with it. That's right. That's right.
That's right.
It's our
Unless you
free
want
will.
him to.
See, if we didn't have free will, what would happen? God's will would just rule.
Yeah, just be robots.
Yeah, we would do everything perfectly.
Right.
Because God would say, this is the way. We'd go, okay.
Right.
You know? Now, when
Resistance is futile.
huh?
Resistance is futile.
Resistance is futile. That's right. That's right. Okay. Okay, so let's go on with it. Actually function only the perfection of function, such coordinate and subordinate sources and centers and personalities. So who's he talking about? Coordinate and subordinate sources and centers of personalities. Would that not be God the Son, God the Spirit, God the Deity, absolute, universal?
Coordinate would be God the Son and the Spirit.
That's
And
right.
subordinate would be at the lower level, like whoever they like the Creator sons and
That's
all
right.
those guys.
That's right. And would that not also be what? The other three absolutes, the second level? Would they not be subordinate to the first source and center always? Right? If you think of God the Son and God the Spirit, are they not more associative than anything?
Yes.
You know? Because nothing is done without them, right? Okay, let's keep moving. Oh shoot, it is 12 o'clock. We're going to have to stop here. Well, we're never going to get this far. Y'all have lots of questions, which is good. Okay, let's stop here. Somebody write this down. Here, for service. And we'll take it up from here next time. Let's say a little prayer, and we'll stop the video and have some lunch. Father, thank you for such a beautiful, beautiful day today, and thank you for this opportunity to share with one another. We pray that we've all learned something today, and we share this with other people as we go out through our lives. Pray that you'll bless our families and help us with our needs in our daily lives. Pray that you'll watch over each and one of our families and our health and our friendships. And bless those that will listen to this online too. We thank you and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me stop this.
Have a good day.